You're listening to Underground USA News.
Friday, August 1st, 2025. A whistleblower has come forward with claims that their supervisor pressured them to endorse the controversial January 2017 intelligence community assessment, alleging Russian support for then-candidate Donald Trump, despite concerns over its credibility. According to the account released by Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, the whistleblower, a former Deputy National Intelligence Officer, faced threats of denied promotion unless they complied with the narrative, which they believed was directed by the Obama administration. The whistleblower's attempts to report these concerns to multiple government officials, including the Intelligence Community Inspector General, were reportedly ignored, raising questions about the integrity of the 2016 election-related intelligence processes. A newly declassified appendix to Special Counsel John Durham's 2023 report, released by Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley on July 31, 2025, suggests that George Soros' Open Society Foundations may have been involved in the Hillary Clinton campaign's efforts to falsely link Donald Trump to Russia during the 2016 election. The document details intercepted communications, including purported emails from Leonard Bernardo, a senior official at Soros' organization, indicating a coordinated plan to demonize Trump by tying him to Vladimir Putin, with expectations that the FBI would amplify the narrative. The annex also highlights the FBI's failure to critically investigate these claims, raising concerns about the politicization of federal agencies. While the authenticity of the emails is deemed likely by Durham's team, the revelations underscore ongoing debates about transparency and accountability in the 2016 election investigations. In a bipartisan move, the Senate Appropriations Committee voted 26-3 to boost the National Institutes of Health budget by $400 million for fiscal year 2026, firmly rejecting the Trump administration's proposed $18 billion cut, which would have slashed NIH funding by 40%. The decision preserves all 27 NIH institutes and centers, dismissing the White House's consolidation plan and its attempt to alter how the NIH funds universities and research centers. This action underscores Congress's commitment to maintaining America's leadership in biomedical research, prioritizing scientific innovation over drastic reductions, though concerns remain about long-term fiscal responsibility and the need for oversight to ensure efficient use of taxpayer dollars. A group of House and Senate Democrats, many of whom are Harvard alumni, have raised concerns over reports that Harvard University is considering a $500 million settlement with the Trump administration to resolve disputes over alleged civil rights violations and diversity policies. The lawmakers, led by Representative Sam Liccardo and Senators Adam Schiff and Chris Van Hollen, argue that such a deal could set a dangerous precedent for political interference in academic institutions. They have threatened a thorough congressional investigation if Harvard proceeds, citing worries about the university yielding to political pressure. This development follows the Trump administration's broader efforts to challenge elite institutions, which supporters view as holding liberal establishments accountable, while critics see it as overreach. President Trump has intensified his push to lower prescription drug costs, sending letters to the CEOs of 17 major pharmaceutical companies, including Eli Lilly, Pfizer, and Merck, demanding they align U.S. prices with lower rates offered in other developed nations within 60 days. Following a May executive order aimed at ending what Trump calls foreign freeloading on American innovation, he warned that noncompliance could trigger federal measures, such as tariffs or importing cheaper drugs. The move seeks to address the disparity where Americans pay over 3 times more for brand-name drugs compared to other OECD countries, despite funding 75% of global pharmaceutical profits. While some companies like AstraZeneca have engaged in discussions, industry experts doubt voluntary compliance, anticipating legal pushback from Big Pharma. A new Senate bill, introduced by senators from California and Colorado, aims to provide critical financial relief to survivors of natural disasters by offering 6 months of mortgage forbearance for those with federally backed loans, without accruing interest or penalties. This legislation, known as the Mortgage Relief for Disaster Survivors Act, responds to the growing frequency of wildfires and floods, allowing homeowners in disaster-declared areas since January 1, 2025, to pause payments and focus on rebuilding, with the option for an additional 6-month extension. While the bill seeks to ease burdens on affected families, some may question the long-term fiscal impact of such measures on federal budgets. The Trump administration is poised to advance its strategic Bitcoin reserve, with White House Digital Assets Chief Bo Hins affirming the U.S. government's commitment to accumulating Bitcoin as a key financial asset. In a recent interview, Hins emphasized that the reserve, already established via executive order, will grow in short order through budget-neutral methods, though he declined to disclose current holdings. Highlighting Bitcoin's unique status, Hins noted the administration's focus on fostering a robust regulatory framework to bolster the cryptocurrency industry, signaling confidence in its potential to strengthen America's economic position. This move underscores a proactive stance on digital assets, prioritizing innovation while maintaining fiscal responsibility. In a bold move underscoring the need for decisive action to bolster American economic growth, President Trump has publicly urged the Federal Reserve's Board of Governors to wrest full authority from Chair Jerome Powell, labeling him stubborn for refusing to implement substantial rate cuts that could alleviate burdensome debt costs for families and the government. Trump's call, posted on his Truth Social platform, follows the Fed's decision to maintain its benchmark overnight loan rate at an average of 4.33%, as Powell cautiously assesses the inflationary pressures from Trump's tariffs. However, Trump advocates for a dramatic 3 percentage point reduction to stimulate job creation and counter a weakening labor market, highlighted by July's disappointing addition of just 73,000 jobs and downward revisions for prior months, while two Trump-nominated governors, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman, dissented in favor of modest cuts during the Fed's July 30th meeting, earning the president's praise. This push reflects ongoing tensions over the central bank's independence, with implications that aggressive easing could risk reigniting inflation currently hovering at 2.6%, slightly above the 2% target, yet potentially necessary to prevent further stagnation in an economy, prioritizing fiscal responsibility and maximum employment. The Georgia State Election Board has taken a significant step toward ensuring transparency in the 2020 election by voting to enlist the Trump Department of Justice's help in securing voting records from Fulton County. This move underscores the board's commitment to thoroughly investigating allegations of irregularities in one of the most contentious elections in recent history, refusing to let the matter be dismissed or ignored. While critics may view this as revisiting settled issues, supporters argue it's a necessary action to restore public trust in the electoral process, emphasizing that unresolved questions deserve answers. The board's decision signals that the case remains active and far from closed. In a move to aid recovery, California Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass have suspended state low-income housing mandates for areas devastated by January's Palisades and Eaton wildfires. The executive actions, taken on July 30th, aim to expedite rebuilding in hard-hit regions like Pacific Palisades by removing bureaucratic hurdles, allowing communities to focus on restoring homes and infrastructure without the added burden of affordable housing quotas, as mandated in other communities across the state. While the state's broader push for low-income housing remains, this temporary exemption acknowledges the unique challenges faced by fire-ravaged neighborhoods striving to rebuild. New York City mayoral candidate Zoran Mamdani, a self-described democratic socialist, has drawn sharp criticism for attempting to distance himself from his past calls to defund the NYPD, particularly following the tragic death of Officer Didarul Islam in a Midtown Manhattan shooting. Mamdani, who in 2020 labeled the NYPD racist and advocated for its defunding, now claims those statements stemmed from frustration over George Floyd's death, asserting he no longer supports such measures. Critics, including NYC Councilwoman Ina Vernikov and Assemblyman Jake Blumenkrantz, have dismissed this shift as political theater, accusing Mamdani of disrespecting voters by assuming they won't notice his apparent flip-flop. This controversy, intensified by Mamdani's absence from the city during the recent violence, underscores skepticism about his sincerity as he campaigns for mayor. A federal judge has ruled that a lawsuit filed by Jewish educator Emily Mizrachi against the Philadelphia School District can move forward, spotlighting allegations of pervasive antisemitism within one of America's largest public school systems. U.S. District Judge Anita Brody rejected the district's motion to dismiss, allowing the case to advance to trial after claims that Mizrachi faced harassment, including anti-Semitic social media posts by colleagues and a Free Palestine poster linked to violent imagery, which the district failed to address adequately during the 2022-2023 and 2023-2024 school years. The decision underscores growing concerns about unchecked anti-Semitic behavior in educational institutions. With the case now set for discovery and a trial date to be determined after December 1, 2025, Jermaine Matthews, one of 3 suspects charged in a brutal Cincinnati street beating that gained national attention, was released from Hamilton County Jail on a $270,000 bond with ankle monitoring, as confirmed by his attorney, Brandon Fox. The incident, captured on video outside a downtown nightclub on July 26, 2025, showed a mob assaulting 2 victims, prompting outrage and an FBI investigation into potential hate crime charges. Fox claims the victims used racial slurs and initiated the conflict, a narrative disputed by prosecutors who allege Matthews coordinated the attack. With 2 other suspects still in custody and 2 more charged but not yet apprehended, the case continues to fuel debates over urban safety and justice. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted for her role in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking crimes, has been quietly moved from a Florida prison to the minimum security federal prison camp Bryan in Texas, a facility known for its relaxed conditions and dubbed Club Fed. The transfer, which occurred on July 31, 2025, follows Maxwell's recent meetings with Justice Department officials, including Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, sparking speculation that she may be seeking a deal to share information about Epstein and his high-profile associates. While her legal team pushes for a potential pardon or reduced sentence, critics, including victims' families, argue that any leniency would undermine justice for survivors of Epstein's abuse. The move raises questions about transparency and accountability in the ongoing Epstein case, which continues to stir public and political debate. President Trump has announced a $200 million project to construct a 90,000-square-foot state ballroom in the White House's East Wing, fulfilling a long-standing vision to provide a grand venue for hosting major events, capable of seating 650 guests. Set to begin in September 2025 and expected to be completed before the end of Trump's term in 2029, the project will be fully funded by Trump and private donors, ensuring no taxpayer burden. The initiative, led by Clark Construction and McCrory Architects, aims to modernize the East Wing while preserving the White House's historical integrity, replacing the need for temporary tents used for large gatherings. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt emphasized the ballroom's role as a much-needed and exquisite addition, with Trump's real estate expertise driving a legacy project for future administrations. President Donald Trump has escalated tariffs on Canadian goods to 35%, effective August 1, 2025, citing Canada's alleged failure to curb fentanyl trafficking across the U.S. border. In a letter to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, Trump emphasized the need for stronger action against the flow of deadly drugs, which he claims contributes significantly to America's opioid crisis, alongside other trade disputes like Canada's dairy tariffs. The move follows earlier 25% tariffs on non-USMCA goods and a 10% levy on Canadian energy, prompting Canada's $43 billion retaliatory tariffs. While Trump suggested tariff adjustments if Canada cooperates on fentanyl, critics argue the minimal fentanyl, 0.2% of U.S. seizures crossing from Canada, undermines the justification, raising concerns about economic fallout for both nations' intertwined economies. The European Union's ongoing NGO funding controversy has intensified as the European Taxpayers Association filed a formal complaint against former EU Commissioners Frans Timmermans and Virginijus Sinkevicius, alleging mismanagement of €7 billion in EU funds allocated to NGOs between 2019 and 2024. Critics argue that the European Commission's lack of oversight enabled these funds to support advocacy groups, some of which were allegedly directed to lobby for policies like the Green Deal, raising concerns about the misuse of taxpayer money to influence EU legislation. The European Court of Auditors has labeled the funding process opaque. And while the Commission has acknowledged unauthorized lobbying, it denies direct involvement in shaping NGO activities. A new European Parliament working group is now tasked with investigating these financial ties, as calls grow for stricter controls to ensure accountability and protect the integrity of EU policymaking. In a firm stance prioritizing national security and accountability for American taxpayer dollars, the Trump administration has notified Congress that the United Nations Relief and Works Agency is irredeemably compromised by its deep entanglements with Hamas and must be dismantled, emphasizing that the agency has failed to prevent terrorist exploitation of humanitarian aid channels. Revelations following the October 7, 2023 attacks on Israel exposed at least a dozen UNRWA employees' direct involvement, with reports indicating that up to 12% of its Gaza staff belong to Hamas or other terrorist groups, allowing the militants to hijack and resell aid intended for civilians. A senior State Department official bluntly stated that UNRWA effectively provides cover for Hamas operations, underscoring the agency's persistent corruption and ineffectiveness in delivering aid without bolstering extremism. The U.S. halted funding in January 2024 and fully withdrew from UNRWA in February 2025, demanding the return of unspent funds amid eyewitness accounts from Gazans of Hamas commandeering aid trucks, reinforcing the need for alternative, trustworthy mechanisms to support Palestinian civilians without empowering radicals. On July 31, 2025, El Salvador's Legislative Assembly, dominated by President Nayib Bukel's New Ideas Party, passed constitutional amendments eliminating presidential term limits, allowing Bukel to seek re-election indefinitely and extending presidential terms from 5 to 6 years. The reforms, approved with a 57-3 vote, also align presidential and congressional elections by moving the next election to 2027, scrapping the second round of voting. Supporters like lawmaker Ana Figueroa argue the changes empower voters to decide leadership freely, citing Bukel's popular gang crackdown that has significantly reduced violence. Critics, including opposition Congresswoman Marcela Villatoro, warn that these reforms concentrate power, undermine democracy, and risk authoritarianism, drawing comparisons to Venezuela's political trajectory. A radioactive wasp nest, registering radiation levels 10 times above federal safety limits, was discovered on July 3 at the Savannah River site in Aiken, South Carolina, a former Cold War-era nuclear weapons facility. The nest, found near tanks storing millions of gallons of liquid nuclear waste, was sprayed with insecticide and disposed of as radiological waste, with officials assuring no public danger or leaks from the tanks. However, the incident, attributed to legacy radioactive contamination from the site's past operations, has sparked skepticism from watchdog groups like Savannah River Site Watch, which questions the lack of clarity on the contamination's source and potential for other undetected hazards. This unsettling find underscores the ongoing challenges of managing nuclear waste and the need for vigilant oversight at decommissioned sites.
You're listening to Underground USA News.